An update tonight on the Centennial Bridge project. I have members of my team with me here tonight. I have first Thomas Hussa. He is road design leader with KDOT. And then I have a couple of other gentlemen here who are with HDR, who is KDOT's design consultant on the project. I have Corey Imhoff here. Hi. And Simon Sun.
Good evening.
And then back here we have Chris Deffenbaugh, Chad Hall, and Samantha Cicero.
At the curve.
I know.
That's good.
All right, and with that, I will turn it over to Corey to kind of go through our presentation here.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. So my name is Corey Imhoff. I'm a Senior Vice President with HDR, and I'm the project manager for HDR in delivering this project. It's an exciting project, and we're really proud to be a part of this for KDOT and for the city. And hope you see some of our work here tonight, and really open it up to feedback from you guys as we go through that. Just starting out at a high level, the project needs, the bridge has outlived its useful life. There was a study back in 2016, Advanced Preliminary Engineering Study, that studied that in a lot of detail. It really identified the need for the new bridge and some of the issues that surrounded it, and had a lot of public outreach at that time. The type and location of the structure and where it's at, you'll find that we're staying pretty consistent with that prior outreach work, that prior study. That's pretty important here as we go forward into this. Really, the project in and of itself is coming about because the bridge is aging. It needs to have a lot more maintenance done to it, and a lot more disruption to traffic using the structure. So it's really the genesis for the bridge project that we're talking about today. The key piece of the project that we're working on today that differs from the Advanced Preliminary Engineering Study in 2016 is that tolling is not a part of this project. All right, that's gone. So that's the key piece of this. Really enhancing and furthering the public outreach efforts, both stakeholder outreach, coordination with the city. Work sessions like this is a big integral part of the process that we're working on right now. We really value that and value this input and this interaction. The bridge will be expanded from the current 2 lanes that it is today to 4 lanes in the future. Those 4 lanes come from 2 lanes for Route 92, 2 lanes from Spur 45, and the way we'll get into a little bit here in a second to show you how we connect to those. And again, we're staying pretty consistent with the Advanced Preliminary Engineering Study and the results that came from that as well. So that's an important piece of that. The pedestrian and cycle path that was in that study is retained in our current project, so you'll see some more on that. And the bridge will be a modern bridge, long lifespan structure, easier to maintain, and less disruption to traffic for maintenance in the future is really important. We are enhancing the way the structure is set up for river traffic as well, relative to the Corps' river training devices and the structures in the river, where the barges can actually transit through the structure a little safer, a little bit more easily as well. So that's a part of this as well. Another really key piece of this project that I want to emphasize is that we are maintaining traffic throughout construction. That there'll be very minor disruption to traffic as we are working on this project and opening it to the public use. All right, so it's a common question that we'll show you later on that we get. And the answer is we're going to maintain traffic across the bridge and through the intersection pretty much throughout construction, okay? There will be minor disruptions here and there, but minor is the key word there. Right now, early 2023, we are preparing for our first public meeting in February. We do have a link to that on our website right now, and the date's set up for February 21st. And we're really looking forward to that, to really roll what we're talking about tonight out to the rest of the public and get their input on it. If you look at the timeline that's on the screen, we're really trying to get through our preliminary design efforts, our NEPA efforts. NEPA's kind of the environmental aspects of the project this year, get into right-of-way acquisition next year, finalize design in 2026, and then should KDOT allocate construction funding to this project. That's a note that's important here, a distinction that's important, is that the construction funding still has to be allocated. We anticipate construction beginning in 2027 and completing by 2029. Why does it take 3 years to build a bridge? It's because of the river, all right? The environment and what we're seeing, it's prudent to allow that much time to build a bridge like this over the Missouri River with what the river's been doing here recently. So by the end of 2029, we're hoping to have the new bridge up and the old bridge down and have a really nice celebration out there. So I mentioned that the frequently asked questions. I'm just going to kind of read these verbatim here for you guys and for the public. These FAQs come from our website. These are the most common ones we get, and we just want you guys to hear them and hear how we're responding to them for your information. So why do we need a new Centennial Bridge? The existing bridge is nearing the end of its useful life, and major repairs to the steel structure will become more numerous and expensive over time. The new bridge will double traffic capacity, include a dedicated pedestrian and cyclist pathway, increase safety, reliability, and environmental outcomes, and create new commercial and community opportunities. It will also enhance transportation and security for the U.S. Army garrison Fort Leavenworth. The next most frequently asked question is, can the existing bridge not be repaired? And our response has been, the bridge is in satisfactory condition, but does not meet modern design standards and has become functionally obsolete. A major repair project was required in 2011 to repair damage and deterioration to the bridge's steel structures and roadway. Unexpected and costly repairs outside routine maintenance will increase over time. All right, a few more here, and this is just our top 5 that we wanted you guys to hear before we get into the bridge aesthetics was, what will the new bridge look like? We're going to share some of that with you tonight, but and we'll share more of that with the public at our public meeting. But our response to date has been the new bridge's final design and aesthetic features are still being developed and will be shown to the public once available, likely in early 2023. So that's where we're at today. Whenever possible, public stakeholders will be given an opportunity to provide input on bridge design features. And then the next question that we've received is, how will the new bridge improve traffic conditions? And the response has been expanding the river crossing from 2 to 4 lanes, 2 lanes going east and west, will reduce traffic congestion, improve access and maneuverability for bridge repairs, improve public safety, and provide U.S. Army garrison Fort Leavenworth with increased reliability. The next question, last one, will commuters experience delays? The existing bridge will remain open to the public during the project's construction phase, and delays are anticipated to be infrequent and short in duration. Notification of all anticipated traffic impacts will be publicized via website, outreach emails, KDOT, and MoDOT social media channels, and local news media. And at the bottom of the screen here is the website where these FAQs are coming into and where we're responding to. And we have had really good interaction with the public through that website. So it's constantly monitored by our team and reported out on, and questions are answered. So just getting into a little bit of the detailed design here. We are going to talk about the roadway layout, the bridge layout, and some of the aesthetic features. Starting with the roadway layout. High level, what you see here is just past the Sherman Avenue or 4th Street and slightly past the 5th Street. On the west side is kind of where our project begins. And we go through the roundabout at Spur 45, Route 92 on the Missouri side, and we tie in over there as soon as we can. MoDOT's recently built the roundabout at the intersection of 45 Spur and Route 92. This project will tie into that, try to minimize reconstruction and minimize the impacts to public as we get into that. And we are adding a westbound bypass lane from Route 92 for increased capacity, and that creates the 4 lanes that are coming into the bridge. Okay. All right, so you got Route 92 plus the roundabout, the lane coming out of the roundabout. Both those plug in for your westbound lanes. Eastbound lane, one lane plugs into the roundabout, the other goes to the bypass lane to Route 45. So that's how it's configured. Blowing up a little bit, looking at the intersection. We've got a 4-lane bridge. We've got some added capacity. We've really studied this intersection closely to enhance the operation of this at this intersection and make sure we take advantage of the 4-lane configuration that we're putting out there for operations and reliability. So if you look at this and you compare it to what's out there today, you'll see a number of additional lanes, a number of additional turn lanes. And we've really coordinated closely with the Fort, with their gate counts and how they operate the gate in the mornings and evenings. And we've again coordinated very closely with the Fort to size this up the right way. We've also coordinated with staff as far as the way we've handled the access control and the configuration of the intersection as well. So we think that this will be a nice enhancement for the community as part of this project. So. The bridge itself is located just to the north of existing. It's been strategically located to try to make it as gentle of a curve coming in as into Sherman and 4th Street after you go over the river. We've really worked on that to try to make that curve more gentle through there. And we've also sited the bridge far enough to the north to where it makes demolition of the existing bridge safe and something that we can do without a lot of hazard to the new bridge we're building and to the traveling public. You'll notice in the elevation view down below, kind of that profile of what the bridge looks like. We have pretty standard approach spans on either side of the river, but a fairly long parabolically haunched plate girder span over the river itself. So it will be a nice looking structure whenever it's done as far as the slope and the configuration of the structure. And again, that's staying fairly consistent with the results of the advanced preliminary engineering study with some slight adjustments for pier locations for navigation. And then just blowing up at the roundabout, everything kind of in that green area that's encapsulated there is the existing roundabout, and the darker gray is the new bypass lane for westbound Route 92, and then the barrier separated lanes going in each direction to the west of that to the new bridge, and connection to Spur 45 on the south side there. As part of this reconfiguring of the project, you'll see a new access road, utility driveway to the Southern Star pipeline easement there as well for their maintenance. So getting into bridge aesthetics, we've really worked on this a lot as a team internally. KDOT has given us a lot of feedback. We've worked closely as a team with MoDOT, KDOT, with staff, other stakeholders, Public Works, Parks and Rec, Platte County, Missouri. A lot of people from a stakeholder level to talk about this project and kind of what the needs are. The Fort Garrison Commander has really been a big part of that as well. So we've been building kind of some ideas from people on what this should look like from the stakeholder level. I'll bring it up to you guys. Want to have the public take a look at it as well. Mm-hmm. So there's been a process in place with all of this, and this is kind of the results of that process. The photograph that you see here, or the rendering you see here, is over the top of the railroad. Note the locomotive on that upper rendering. Mm-hmm. In that area, we're trying to take some requirements from the railroad for some taller fencing and making that an aesthetic feature that kind of gives credit to the existing arch structure with the way we're setting up our fencing. And the color of the fencing has been set up to really embrace the existing arches as well. So, as well as the color of the lighting as well. So, so I talked about the process. We really brought in independent outside bridge architecture experts, kind of our best in our company, to come in and really start generating ideas and throwing stuff out there to the team. And we really brainstormed a whole range of options that we could look at. And we started narrowing those down into concepts and strategies by working with our stakeholders and with our teammates, looking at what the cost would be to really drive to the concepts that we're putting on the table for you guys to look at and consider and give us feedback on tonight. So it's led to what we've seen, but it's been many months in the making on how we've been trying to drive at this. It's really been done very thoughtfully. So I just want you guys to know that. So as far as the way what we've incorporated in our base design is some overlooks that, if you look at the main bridge in the elevation view, there's really two main piers that are out in the river. Each one of those piers has an overlook for people to go out and look at the river. The pedestrian pathway is sited on the south side of the bridge, so people can walk across the structure, go to these overlooks, and look back towards the city. And they can really get out of the way of people that will be using that to, walk and run and things like that. The pedestrian walkway, the shared use path will be terminated with a little roundabout bulb out on the Missouri side, but it won't preclude it being extended in the future by future projects. But it'll have to. Right now, it doesn't connect anything over there, but it's been done in a way that people can turn around and come back and experience the river.
It's neat.
The railing, the arches you see in the railing, again, that's to show some deference to the existing arch structure out there as well.
That's
as
nice.
well as the color.
How tall is the railings?
Chad, what's the height?
54 inches are on the outside.
Okay.
To meet
54.
code for safety for bicyclists.
Yeah. Thanks.
And you notice the two-tube rail and the traffic barrier as well. So there's a barrier separating the pedestrians. There's a two-tube rail on top of that barrier. And that two-tube rail was, through coordination with staff, refined from prior options and to where the driver and the motorist can see out and see the river and kind of experience things as they're driving across a little bit better and kind of opening up the crossing. So that was one of the refinements that we put into the project. There will be lighting on the walkway, so it can be used day or night.
Nice. I was wondering about that.
Yeah. So it'll be lit. There'll be some, like I said, some taller fencing over some of the railroads. It won't be the same height all the way. This is kind of a section in the taller area, but and then so that the upper one is looking to the east, and then the lower one's looking back to the west. So as you're coming on the westbound side, this is what you'll see on the lower side. So there's that matching two-tube rail on the north side of the bridge, just like there is on that traffic barrier on the south. And with that, we just wanted to present these concepts to you real quick, get some feedback, and open it up for questions at this point in time. So,
Great presentation. Once the new bridge is built, what happens to the existing bridge?
so the existing bridge will be demolished and pulled out of the river and salvaged. So it'll be completely demolished.
And when it comes to the public meetings, like where are you gonna host these meetings at?
Yeah. So Chris.
So Riverfront Community Center, we'll be there from 4 to 7 on Tuesday, the 21st of February. We'll be reaching out to stakeholders and announcing it to the public through, social media and things like Corey mentioned earlier. So we'll do as much as we can to get the word out.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and Chris handles all of our public information for the team. So.
Okay. Any questions?
Well, I like the concepts. I mean, I saw the original. The original was pretty vanilla. It's pretty plain. Didn't have much there, but having varying heights in the fencing, I think, really adds a lot to the rolling hills of Kansas and Missouri. I mean, I think that really looks good, and I like seeing that. And I think it'll be really nice when it's lit up at night. And I think the overlook is a great idea while you're building it, putting that including in that. And the walkway, which I assume bicycles and, everybody who has a non-motorized can take that. But I like it. I like the design you've come up with.
Are there any other similar designs like this in Kansas? It's
Think
one of a
about
kind.
it's fairly unique in Kansas. I'm sure there are some
We
we
are
could get you
unique
guys.
First city. First city.
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah,
No, not anymore. It's all different. Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that. Yeah, I don't, but, yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful though.
Yeah, I like it. I'm looking forward to it.
What's that?
How much?
So
So cost estimates here, you have
so-
any idea?
So
Oh, yeah, we had those already.
I'll just say that what you see here is part of our base project. We are working on cost estimates. I don't know, Thomas, you wanna us to share cost estimates right now? We're still kind of baking
I think they're
those.
pretty preliminary in nature still, so
Yeah,
we're still working on it,
we're still working on it, yeah.
refining it.
Yeah, and I'll just say right now, the market is real dynamic, so
Yeah.
we're monitoring the market. And we're working together to refine the construction cost estimates on everything, so.
When he says the base project, so we had told the commission and the community at some point the city may have to reserve some funds for aesthetic improvements. And by the base, this would be covered in the project costs. And
good.
it was a lot of work by the KDOT team and the HDR team to get these elements into a base project. And the work that they did with the fencing and the ideas and the colors and the lighting, very responsive to everything that they heard from the public. We knew the arches were not gonna be there, but what can we do? To have something more than just a concrete bridge, and I think from what you see tonight, I think they've hit it out of the park.
I do too, It's a lot different than
So,
the
just to
concept.
make sure I've got this right, it's basically gonna be an out and back walkway for the pedestrians.
For the time being, yeah.
Yeah, and
They can, yeah,
There's
Yeah,
a
they can
bulb,
go
there's
out
a
and
bulb
then
out,
come back.
there's a bulb
Corey,
out there where they can kind of turn
Go
around.
to that
and-
Missouri blow up, I think it shows up in there. Oh, one more.
And there's opportunity to maybe work with Mid-America Regional Council, Platte County and stuff to maybe tie that into that Weston and Straight Trail at some point.
That'd be good.
There's a lot of
Yes, I
grants
wondered what
available for pedestrian
Missouri was
access
gonna
and stuff
do.
like that, so.
you know.
Yep,
Yeah, so,
that'd be good.
so it's hard to see, but right here at this abutment, and when you come off of the east abutment, there's just kind of a bulb out there where people can kind of turn around and come back for the time being. In the future, there's lots of ideas on the Missouri side on how that could be connected to facilities in the
growth.
future. Yeah, for growth. And nothing that we're doing is precluding that. We're maintaining the clearances, and the design will embraces kind of all those future plans that are there for a future trail connection, so.
Yeah, I really like I think it looks really classy and modern, and I do like, it looks like it's pretty wide, the pedestrian and bicycle lane compared to, I mean, I think we have one now, but I don't even think I would try to walk on it, it's very narrow, so I like that, and curious if you'd know this, the current bridge that we have built there, are the materials used to do the new bridge different or better, I guess, last longer?
They should be more maintainable. They
Okay.
should be better. They should be higher quality, but what was done many years ago has lasted for a long time, so I don't.
It has.
I don't wanna,
It has.
the existing structure's been an amazing structure, and we're hoping that this one is as well, so.
Okay.
How much higher is the new bridge gonna be vertically than the current one?
Yeah.
I know you've got traffic coming under like you would with this one.
Yeah, so we have to maintain 52 foot of vertical clearance over the navigational elevation, maximum navigable waterway elevation here. So we've hit that.
So probably about the same as what it is currently?
It's pretty close. We're a little higher in a couple of locations where we're coming down with profile. Simon knows the profile probably better than anybody, but.
I don't have the exact numbers, but I was looking recently at the very west end. I would say it was 4 to 6 feet
4 to
taller.
6 feet, yeah.
Okay,
I was gonna say about 6 feet is where it's the maximum.
Nice.
okay.
It's not bad because there's some extra clearance there that we were able to take advantage of. And just the way we configured the parabolic conch of the play girder and everything like that, so. We have worked closely with the Coast Guard and the Corps already, so we're fairly confident with our layout in regard to the span arrangement and the depths.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
We appreciate
guys.
it. Great
Wonderful
presentation.
We really look forward to you guys showing up at the public meeting here on the 21st and
Yes,
being a part of that as well, so. What's that?
definitely, thank you.
4 to 7.
4 to 7.
You
Yeah.
get there really early.
You can get there at 10, but.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you so much. Yeah, great, exciting.
Have a great night.
You too.
You wanna go catch that game? You serious about it?
Today's the 21st.
Tuesday, I believe.
Oh, do we have a meeting?
We do, but this is 4 to 7.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Ready? All right, next item on the agenda, a presentation by the Leavenworth Interfaith Community of Hope.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, we have Miranda Agnew, the Executive Director, here tonight to give us a briefing on what's going on.
And I'm gonna pass it around. Not as high tech as my bridge friends, but
Good, you're good.
I told them hard act to follow, but I was hoping they were asking for money because I wasn't, and then I would win. Nope, they just get to be the cooler ones for sure. Mr. Wilson, commissioners, Mr. Kramer, thanks for having me. Again, this year, I gave you a nice boring presentation last year on all the ins and outs of our organization. I'm not gonna do that as much this year. I'm gonna do a little bit more data and walk you through where we are this year compared to last year, but I know I've met everyone at this table, but for anybody else, my name's Miranda Agnew and I am the Executive Director at the Community of Hope. So I did give you just some kind of highlights so that when I leave here and you are so interested about all the things I talk about, you can refer to this, but I did want to just walk through kind of where we are this year and compared to last year. Some things have changed as we watch trends. We have provided over 5,300 beds this year. That was very comparative to last year. And so when we talk beds, it's, you know, not just necessarily unique individuals, but how many are we filling throughout the year. So that number is significant after coming off of COVID. And we averaged about 15 a night, and that number actually is very similar to last year. What is not as similar is we had a pretty significant increase in the unique individuals we serve. So last year we had 161, this year we had 210. Shows us there is an increase in the number of homeless that we're seeing and serving. On the benefit of that, further down, we're averaging less nights in the shelter. It's not always the case that that is a positive thing, but what we like to see is we are finding other resources beyond homelessness and even homelessness in the shelter. So that is a number that we have tracked for the last 2 years since I have been there. We're watching trends. What we would not want to see is that number of how many nights people are staying is increasing. And so we appreciate that the things that we are implementing and things that we're doing are hopefully leading to less nights inside the shelter. The question we get asked a lot is, do we regulate that? And we currently do not. There is not a limit to how many nights you can stay at the shelter. We're working towards that, but with not the right amount of resources. What we don't want to do is just send them back to the streets. That is not a great solution. So while we would love to say everybody gets 30 days, everyone gets 60 days, if my only solution is to say, go live on the streets, then we will not do that until we have a better solution. So that's where we are. We just, for data's sake, we had quite a few more females over the last year. So that is a change from last year. And then our vet status is down. Last year, we saw around 20 to 25% of our individuals we were serving were vets. We're down to about 17%. We have a great partnership and just continue to increase our partnership with the VA and Hope House and Safe Haven that are also in our community. There is a case manager with the VA that comes and meets individuals at our organization so that we know how best to serve them and if there's programs that the VA can provide versus ours. So that is also, we're okay with that number that it's decreasing just because we believe they're still being served. I will point out the average age of guests, and I do this because we saw more families this year than historically we've ever seen. We had a lot more babies in the shelter, and so the average age of guests that we saw this year was 39 compared to last year 46, which is a huge change of individual that we are serving. 27 of the kids, there were 27 kids 18 and under that we served last year. That is significantly increased from any prior year. And 20 of those were under the age of 9. So that just tells you the number of kids we were serving. For just being transparent, for an organization like ours, if you have not been to our building, we do serve men, women, and families. That is kind of unique to a shelter, not super unique to a rural shelter, but to a shelter in general. It can provide some concerns for people. So we talk to a lot of people about those concerns, but it's not ideal to have, a 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 1-year-old in an open facility. So we have hard floors, concrete floors, and echoes very much. And so what I always say is when we have babies in the shelter, everybody wakes up like they have newborns. Because once a baby cries, every single person is up listening to that. So one of our big goals in 2023 and 2024 and future years is to find out what solution we need to look at for that. We visit shelters, not just in Leavenworth, but around the state and into Missouri. Many do not serve families in the same shelter that they're serving low barrier adult individuals. So that may be individuals with felonies or drug charges or offenders, but we do because there's not any other option here. And so we're looking at what that would look like if we served families in a different way. But we are seeing a lot more family evictions and a lot more families that are needing resources as far as night shelters. So that is something that we're looking into. So that's a little bit about our night shelter. It is open 365 days a year. It has been since we started our organization. There's not a night that we close. And then for our day center, we served over 17,000 meals this year, which was a significant increase. 2 years ago, we saw about those numbers. It's kind of in the middle and the heart of COVID. We hit kind of a low last year, and then we are very quickly bouncing back up with food prices increasing. A lot of new families who have never had food insecurity are experiencing that. We do serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So breakfast and lunch are served out of our day center, and then at night, prior to entering the night shelter, they do get dinner, typically in the way of a sandwich or whatever else we have. So our day center is still open. We have a lot of rumors that we are not open, and we are. We have about 81 individuals that we serve on any given time, on our approved list, 81 individuals in our day and night shelter. Our day center, what we have found with that, we kind of locked the doors during COVID. It used to be completely open, and anybody at this table or anybody who wanted to could enter as they wished and leave as they wished. What we discovered is having a central location for several individuals of a vulnerable population. If individuals had ill intentions, a lot of the times they were utilizing our building. And so in that regard, I don't know that we will ever, quote unquote, open the door to anybody. And that's a struggle for some people. That's not to say we do not serve the homeless. They may come in. We just have different ways that they get in those programs so that we can help ensure that the population that may be trying to get better or a population of a vulnerable nature has some protections in our building. And then we still have Welcome Central, which is our resourcing center. So we did 326 intakes at that program. So those, when I'm talking intakes, that's not necessarily anybody entering our doors. Those are individuals we're sitting down with to do birth certificates or IDs, help with jobs, help with food stamps, help with disability, budgeting, anything like that. Potentially night shelter services, but not always. It's anybody in our entire community. Could be a rental assistance situation or helping fill out applications. Through that program, we were able to help house 20 individuals. That is up from 11 last year. We feel very good about that number. Continuing to find ways to navigate the system. When a Section 8 list is 2 years long, that's just the nature of that program. So what are other options and what are other ways? Sometimes it's just helping the individuals apply for retirement because they worked for years and years but haven't worked for 10 and they just need help. So I feel very good that 20 out of the 210 we worked with were housed. We also provide transportation, just as a reminder. I know there's a lot of things fun about transportation, so we will reevaluate how we're doing this. We're doing it on a volunteer basis, so I always say we do the best we can. That's about all I can say about our transportation. But through that program, we did provide 943 round-trip rides, which was an increase, and that's just documented. Sometimes it's not documented because somebody forgets they have an appointment or needs to get to KU quickly, and we just, jump in and go. But over 13,000 miles were accounted for in our transportation program. And then we provided over $26,000 in assistance, and that can be anything from rental and utility assistance. That number is down significantly from from last year, and the reason is because the COVID grants went away. We are primarily funded on I will say $5 at a time. Sometimes we get an awesome grant from the city of Leavenworth, the CDBG grant we have gotten in the past to help pay for some of our utilities. We get a couple small grants from United Way, but otherwise we are run by the community, which is actually amazing to sit in my seat and watch how much the community supports us. At some point, we need to be running on grants. But we have to get some things in place before we can do that. So hopefully in the near future, we'll be applying for ESG grants, which actually comes through the city, and some other homeless grants that we need to be applying for. Additionally, something that we have found is we aren't going to be able to be the experts of everything, homelessness and roadblocks and all of that, but it's finding those partners that are. And so one of the big things is getting adequate medical care to individuals who are uninsured, which, just to give you an idea, everyone says, well, everybody could get Medicaid. About 90% of the individuals we work with cannot get Medicaid. They just can't. There's no getting it. And so trying to find another way to provide adequate medical care, so we're not calling 911 for what either was minor at one point or is minor, not getting to the ER. And so we have a once a month medical team that comes into our building. That helps with them feeling comfortable. A lot of it's a trust thing. It's a population that has been taken advantage of time and time again. And so the medical team comes into our building once a month to provide any type of medical care. I mean, they're not doing surgeries, but they are, Care Beyond the Boulevard is that organization that comes in. What is great about that is, her name is KK. She was the doctor at St. Vincent's and has now founded this nonprofit. And so what's great about that is St. Vincent's also sends a member of their team over during these visits so they can get in real-time medical care, but also get connected with St. Vincent's so they can get routine medical care and follow-up medical care throughout the month. So that has been absolutely huge. I can't give enough praise to St. Vincent's and Care Beyond the Boulevard because that has changed a lot. We always see, substance use increase if we're dealing with a terrible toothache or if the skin on our feet is coming off, not to get too gruesome, but if you're not getting medical care for that, it can lead to a lot of really terrible things. Another really cool thing is partnering with the Guidance Center. We have a case manager from the Guidance Center, so paid for by the Guidance Center, that is stationed at our building. She is there 5 days a week. Her name is Maya, and she can do any case management with guests. What is equally great about that is we are seeing an increase in those getting mental health services. So again, having a guidance center across town, maybe the trust issues are strong, but Maya has been a huge bridge to getting individuals mental health care, which has been amazing. We also have a partnership with RADAC, which is our Regional Drug and Alcohol Assessment Center. They have a new location in Leavenworth, a new case manager in Leavenworth. We are doing everything in our power to ensure they leave that position in Leavenworth because it's very needed. She is in our building every Tuesday providing any kind of substance training or substance support. Otherwise, we committed this year, we piloted it last year. So when I was here last year, I talked a little bit. Our building closes typically from 3 to 9 p.m. So that was a model they had looked at over and over before they established our center, and felt very passionate that that was the way our center should be set up. The unfortunate thing is in the winter, there's very few public centers in Leavenworth for people to go. And the problem with that is they're going to go somewhere. That's what I always say. They have to go somewhere. And so what we decided to do was pilot last year a 5-day-a-week program where we opened the building earlier. Last year it was 6:30. we offered a class, financial management, healthy living, some life skill classes. So you come in, get warm, get a meal, we're offering classes. It went over really well. For our budget, it's a higher budget item, but we went ahead and agreed to that this year again, but we're doing it 7 days a week. It seemed like the 2 days that we were closed, I felt like we're the coldest every day. So this year we did it 7 days a week. We are closing from 3 to 5. Sometimes it's good to be forced just to get outside for a bit, kind of close one program down and let them get everything cleaned up before we open. It's also a staffing decision because we're all strapped when it comes to staffing. So this year, instead of 6:30, we actually open at 5 o'clock and allow those individuals to get inside and get dinner and participate in programs. Our programs are down this year, but our numbers are up. So last year, I think we averaged between 3 and 5, and this year we're averaging between 10 and 20. So, sometimes you're not gonna run a program well with that many people, so we do let them inside though. Other than that, the other main thing that we are starting, which I hesitated bringing up, but for transparency purposes, we are starting a street outreach program next week. I'm a pretty open person. I'm gonna tell you, we have no idea what we're doing. I took over as the regional coordinator of the homeless coalition, the statewide homeless coalition. We have not had a regional coordinator for this area, which does expand beyond Leavenworth County. It is Jefferson and Atchison, so there is a wider range. But I agreed to that because we haven't had a lot of focus on our region. And so data skewed, and we just haven't had representation for this area. So one of the things we are not doing in this region, and again, not just city of Leavenworth, but beyond, is street outreach. So we're gonna try it. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give it a shot and see. And that is it's for multiple reasons. One, it's to get eyes on truly how many street homeless do we have? How many of those individuals can't make it inside of a shelter? Because if we put all of the friends that are in this room in a smaller room, 24 hours a day, some people cannot make it, and that's understandable. So do we have a lot of street homeless individuals, or do we not? If we do, what does serving those individuals look like? What would serving those individuals look like? It is many are doing it across the state well, so we're just gonna have to jump in and try it. On the other side, it's the point in time count is next week, and that is a count that the state does every year, saying how many homeless do you have in your area. That number also has not been correct in our area, probably not correct, but if you think about the school count, the school does a once a year count for how many individuals are filling seats, so this is very similar. So in doing that, if we do have a population of street homeless, which we know we do, how many do we have? And so that is, it's twofold for us. We want to serve that population. We hope to do that possibly monthly. So we're going to attempt to do that.
That's good, because that point in time count never was accurate because it's in February or January.
Right.
Coldest months of the year, and everybody's holed up with friends or other places that are not counted.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have done a better job as I've tried to understand the interworkings of the homeless coalition. We have tried to remove some of the barriers of, the numbers that are counted or, what is counted, because for a while Leavenworth was not. Leavenworth and Atchison are the two that are counted in this region now. But really just trying to, our goal, actually we're redoing mission statement, because our focus is to end homelessness. That is our focus. Yes, we want everybody to be safe, but we really want to make sure that individuals are being served, and that if there are barriers or roadblocks, that we're helping to remove those as a community. There's a lot of great things coming from the Guidance Center that will help tremendously. I will give a shout out to their Crisis Stabilization Center, because there is nothing more heartbreaking than somebody being in crisis and having nowhere for them to go beyond the streets. We have a great partnership with Chief Kitchens. He and I work really well together, and Mr. Creamer. You know, but we need places for people to go. On the day it snowed and it was super icy, I was driving someone to Kansas City because that's where the nearest resource was. And we need that stuff here in our community because then that means more people are gonna get served. So that's kind of all I had. I just wanted to run kind of any changes or anything. We're still plugging along. On the back side of your sheet, you do have some save the dates. We are having an open house on Sunday. Several people have commented that they haven't been in our building either pre-COVID or since it opened 5 years ago. So we hit our 5-year anniversary of the blue building at 311 Kiowa, and so we are gonna have an open house on Sunday, just to let nothing formal, just to let people come in and walk around, and if you've never been in, I would invite you. Also an invite to our annual fundraiser, our gala in April, and some other events. So I would welcome you at any and all, and I think I offered this last year, if at any point you wanna stop by, Jermaine stops by often, just to check in, you guys are welcome to as well, and see the things we have going on.
Miranda, man, we just want to say thank you for everything. It takes a special person to do the work that you're doing. And just thank you just being a servant of God and fulfilling the mission that God has called you to do. I did have a few questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, thank you. I love it, and I have to tailor down how much I talk about it, because I do love it, so.
Yeah, and so just say if there's individuals in the public that would like to volunteer.
Yeah.
Is there certain training that they need to go to, and how do they
Yeah.
get connected to?
So they can either call, I've put a couple dates on there. We do a once a month volunteer training at 6 PM. It's either on a Monday or Wednesday. We try to switch it in case people have work schedules or anything. It's a very quick, I always call it volunteer info and training, because if you just call it training, people think they can't show up. If you are just curious about our organization and what we do and how we operate, please attend. It doesn't mean you have to sign up to be a volunteer, but we do need volunteers. It takes 70 a week to run our night shelter. Before COVID, we had around 250, so that's a very healthy volunteer pool. During COVID, we went down to 50, and so many of our volunteers were working multiple nights. And we are back up, but not nearly like we need to be. It's super easy. You can read a book, you can do your work, because it's all through night. We have 3-hour shifts from 8 to 8. And so, yeah, they can get on Facebook is where we post those events, but they can also call also, and we would love to get them plugged in. Or if they want to volunteer during the day, we have plenty of, if you want to get plugged into the Community of Hope, I promise you I will find you a seat on the bus.
So when it comes to the transportation program, volunteers are just offering their own vehicle?
So
transportation?
Yeah, so we run transportation. We do, and we do our very best. We have a van that is very old and has no radio and, didn't have air conditioning for a while. We have volunteer drivers that drive that van, and then we got a vehicle donated by Family Eye Care by the Riddells this past year. So we have 2 now. But it is just volunteer drivers that are giving up their time. Some of them do drive their own vehicle just out of comfort, but most of them drive our 2 vehicles. And we run it 10 to 3 if we have a volunteer. Our volunteers have to cancel sometimes, and that makes it really difficult. So again, I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but once the city's transportation gets up and running, and I'm part of those transit meetings, very much appreciate Nancy and Julie Hurley, because I think that's going to be great for our community. It will be way better than what we're doing, I promise you. So we'll see once that happens. We struggle a lot with a population of poverty that needs to get to doctor's appointments outside of Leavenworth and Lansing.
That's what I was gonna ask you. How many of those do you have out of your 943
I mean, the
rides?
requests come in all the time, and it just depends on if I can, if Belinda, I have to give a shout out to one of my other directors, because it's usually her in like a moment's notice saying, I'll forget what I'm doing the rest of the day and drive someone to, she had to take someone to Wichita the other day.
Wow.
It's ever challenging, especially in an emergency situation where someone has surgery. Working with St. Vincent's, it's not even necessarily a homeless population always. It's just individuals in poverty that need care, that can't get it because they can't get out of our community. And so I don't want to speak for what we'll do futuristically, but depending on what the city's transit program does, maybe we look at having a volunteer pool of those who can transport outside of the city.
Okay.
And most of those are surgery related, it seems like, so we'll adjust as a lot of the good things happen in our community, which is amazing. Everything that's happening is so good. And then we'll just shift and adjust and see if we can fill a need another place. That's all what we operate on in Welcome Central, is where the gaps are and how we can fill in.
How many staff and how many volunteers do you have?
So last I looked, we had right over 100 volunteers, ever changing, especially, with our amazing military population. I feel like some go out and some come in. We had an increase in our support by Fort Leavenworth this year, being able to get in front of a few of those groups. Staff is, we have two full-time staff. So Belinda Clausen is our Director of Operations. She does a little bit of everything. Started out as truly just doing operations, and now she's over Welcome Central.
That's amazing. You do that with two staff.
Two full-time staff, and then we have two part-time day center supervisors. So we have three. One of them is Sister Pat with Sisters of Charity, but our two staff work 2 days a week, covering our day center and fixing lunch. For the anywhere from 20 to 100 lunches we serve, we have no commercial kitchen. So it's all warming up stuff in an oven and keeping it warm until lunch and meeting all the requirements. It's challenging. So that's what they do. They work 2 days a week. And then we have a night shelter director who is part-time, who oversees our night shelter staff. And then currently we have 5 intake coordinators. So these are the individuals working either 2 hours at night or 2 hours in the morning, bookending our night shelter. So they either bring the individuals in at night or get them out in the morning. And those individuals work anywhere from truly 2 hours a week to typically no more than 10 hours a week.
Okay, they're all part-time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
Questions?
No, my gosh.
I always have to give myself a disclaimer, like, don't talk too much. So I will
No,
come on over anytime.
It's a lot of good information.
Yeah.
I didn't see
I
that you
didn't
talk too much at all.
So Jermaine's pointing to the picture, and Kevin kills me every time I bring these brochures. The gentleman on the front, and these are just, we have so many success stories that are so fun, and the longer it goes on, but Kevin is on the front of that brochure. He was an individual who stayed at our shelter for a very long time, and just, it was all empowerment. It was all within him. He works for us part-time. He's one of our day center supervisors, and has been a great mentor to many of our others. We actually have 2 former guests now. We just hired our second former guest, and he is one of our intake coordinators, which if we can keep doing that, it's even better, because they've been there. I haven't been homeless. I empathize with them. I love every single one of them, but I haven't been there. And so to have 2 staff members who have not only been homeless, but have lived and, have been guests at our shelter is really cool. We've got a great team. We really do. I couldn't ask for a better staff that support, so.
Yep, and if anyone wants to donate,
Yes, for sure. I will, yes, for sure. And I'll be applying for a grant, so, eventually, when we can not just have 2 people running the ship, we will be applying for more city grants. But we truly appreciate the support. We have felt nothing but support from the city of Leavenworth and even the county, just, supporting those that just have some roadblocks. So we've got a great group of people, a lot of roadblocks, but truly a great group of hardworking people who want to do better. So
We appreciate all that you do and the churches that are so involved with you too.
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I just want
I know. How you doing, Mr. Levine? Don't call him Chip.
Mayor Wilson, great to see you.
Rental property coordination update.
Oh, great. So, Mayor Wilson, Commissioner Bowder, Commissioner Hingula, Commissioner Leonhard, great to see you all this evening. As the mayor has already so graciously introduced me, I am your rental property coordinator. The position, I had slides. Did Julie send the slides down? Ooh. Oh, they are on there. Okay. Oh, yeah. Minor break for, oh, there we go.
There we
Okay.
go.
like the bridge.
I do too.
You just,
And do I just click the mouse or? How do I- Oh, okay, if you go back one, just the intro stuff. So the position was created in January 2020. It is now 3 years old. I am the city's primary contact for rental property issues. Also manage the city's rental property database, assist landlords, tenants, neighbors of rental property. I conduct inspections to ensure the property is maintained to code standards. Our last study session was in March 16th of 2021. Next slide, please. So we have the second highest percentage of rental property out of any city in the state of Kansas. So rental property is pretty significant to us. 37% of our properties are rentals. Over 50% of our residences are non-owner occupied or rental units. And to explain the distinction there, you look at something like Woodland Village, that's a single property, but there's 198 residences out there. So that helps to explain why the numbers don't quite match up. When I started 3 years ago, about 42% of our properties were registered. You passed a rental registration ordinance in 2009. Since then, I've brought that up to almost 75%. So we've almost doubled the number of registered rental properties in the last 3 years. The unregistered properties have gone from about 50% unregistered down to 25%, so we've cut that in half. And to give you an idea of the scope, we have landlords from 45 of the 50 states in the United States, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the Army in Europe and the Pacific, and one foreign country. We have over 1,400 registered landlords for over 6,400 rental units in the city. So one of the things I look at is landlords really are a key local business for us here in the city of Leavenworth. Next slide, please. So quick review, we have a rental registration program. This is not a licensing program. City staff looked at this several years ago and decided we only wanted to collect the minimal amount of information and have the minimum amount of oversight that was needed to maintain safe, sanitary, healthy housing. We get our authority to do that from the state legislature, who allow municipalities to prescribe minimum standards for structures in their community. The same thing, landlords and tenants relationship is also governed under state law, the Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. Next slide, please. So for what we have here in the city, again, I'm the key contact for that, but this is a program that looks out not just to tenants, it looks to landlords as small businesses and the neighbors of rental property who in the past didn't really have somebody that they could reach out to if they had an issue with the neighboring property. One of the big things that our rental registration program does is it facilitates notification of landlords. If there is a city issue, we now know who to call. And you can imagine with the number of landlords that are outside the city, finding somebody or being able to pierce the corporate veil and find a person behind an LLC that we can actually contact to address very specific issues. We have a $20 fee for registering your property, and that's a one-time fee. It covers all the properties. So whether you own one property or a few dozen properties, that's the one-time fee that you pay. Now, it's based on the deeded ownership. So if a corporation decides to change the name of one of their LLCs, they are required to re-register again. We talked about enforcing our code. We adopted the International Property Maintenance Code as our standard within the city of Leavenworth back in April of 2020. Next slide, please. Now, what that code does, it enforces minimum standards. We're not looking at Cadillac solutions. I do sometimes get a tenant who's concerned about a scratch on the wall. That's not the kind of things we look at under code. We're looking at holes in the wall. We're looking at infestation from insects. And having the International Property Maintenance Code gives us a recognized standard that we can use to ensure landlords and tenants alike know what is and should be expected. So the code covers general requirements. Back one slide, please. So, a broken window, broken windows are a violation of code. A landlord is responsible to get those repaired, to maintain the integrity of the interior of the structure. The code covers plumbing issues, mechanical and electrical issues, fire safety issues, light, ventilation, and occupancy limitations. And one of the great things when the city adopted the International Property Maintenance Code, this is the same family of codes that our inspections division uses for new buildings, that we use for residences, that are used for plumbing and technical trades. So all of these things are compatible and work together. Let's see, next slide, please. So the other thing that we look at, educating landlords and tenants alike, is a very important part of what I do. Every person who contacts the city to ask for help gets a copy of the Kansas Tenants Handbook. So they understand in plain, simple language what their rights, but also what their responsibilities are under state law. There is actually a landlord's handbook, and when I have a landlord contact me, I provide them with a copy of the landlord's handbook, unless, of course, they're one of our well-established property management companies who are well familiar with what the state laws are. And this basically, it's common sense stuff. A landlord is responsible to maintain their portion of the property. A tenant has responsibilities to maintain the property. Both sides, landlord and tenant, need to comply with the lease. The lease is a contract. Now, one of the things we do tell folks, the city cannot provide legal advice or legal assistance. And in those cases, particularly when we have a low-income tenant, we refer them to Kansas Legal Services. And we have a great relationship with the Kansas City, Kansas office of Kansas Legal Services. They've helped a number of folks within the city. Both sides have to follow state and local law. The landlord collects the rent, the tenant pays the rent, and then, of course, there is those issues of eviction or non-compliance. And one of the things I let folks know, on the one hand, they often see it may be a tenant who's non-compliant with the lease, but we've actually had cases in the district court when a landlord is not compliant with the lease, the tenant can take the landlord to court, break the lease, and they have legal remedies too. So that's one of the big things I've been able to do in this position, is spread that knowledge and information around about what landlords and tenants can and can't do. Next slide, please. I think it's timeless wisdom that says many hands make light work. And of course, we just had Miranda Agnew here. You look at the number of folks that on a daily basis I coordinate with. I work not only with those landlords, property owners, tenants, work within city government, with other agencies within the city, with county government, with non-governmental service organizations, the United Way, Main Street, DCF, the Veterans Administration HUD-VASH program, the Veterans Administration's supportive housing program. Miranda talked a little bit about the support that's available to the veterans in our community through that organization. Miranda also talked about working with the Guidance Center. The Guidance Center has been a key partner, and as you can imagine, we have overlap in the populations that organizations like our social service organizations and Miranda serve, and the services that we're attempting to provide through the city. So it's really a network. A large number of stakeholders within the community have an interest in stable, safe, sanitary housing for the folks who live here. Now, it's Steve Jobs who said, great things are never done by a single person, they're done by a team of people, and this represents that. Next slide, please. Here's an example of that at work. So this is one of our apartment complexes in town. I don't want to point fingers or pick any specific project, but we had the Council on Aging's Meals on Wheels program go down, and they noticed, they said, hey, look, I'm going to provide meals to somebody who lives up these stairs. That railing was shaking back and forth, the stairs were deteriorating, and they got in touch with me. Now, of course, I had to say, hey, by state law, I can't just go out and inspect. I need a tenant or a lawful occupant to actually request the inspection. So Council on Aging got with the tenant who lived up at the top of those stairs. They submitted the request for help. I was able to go out, do the inspection. I have very specific code standards, which I was able to communicate to the owner, this is an out-of-state owner, why those stairs were not compliant with code. And not only did they repair, they replaced the stairs, and the nice thing as a community like we are, that's a local business that actually went out and received the contract to replace the stairs there. So there's some great work that was done by that. But that's part of the feedback I get. I mean, I have out-of-state landlords who say, hey, you know, my local person wasn't really telling me the condition my property was in. It's somewhat counterintuitive, but I have landlords who get a citation and are actually thanking me for letting them know the condition of their property that they may or may not have been aware of. Next slide, please. The nice thing with that, too, in terms of cooperation, this didn't require me taking anybody to court. This was working together as a team with the landlord and our local organizations to get that fixed. So what I would do is highlight some of the accomplishments over the last couple of years. I think some of these results speak for themselves. One of the things we do with our rental registration program, that $20 per landlord adds up. We've increased the revenue in rental registrations from an average of $785 per year in the 5 years prior to the commission establishing my position. In the last 3 years, we have averaged over $2,300 per year in bringing in rental registration revenue. So getting our landlords registered, educating them, informing them also has a benefit. It defrays some of the costs that I have in terms of, you know, postage and things like that. This year, we brought in $3,200 in rental revenue. So that was our best year ever, I think, other than the first year of the program when everybody was registering. In addition to that, with some of the other things we've done, we've brought in over $20,000 in not only rental registration revenue, but admin reimbursement. Of course, as you can imagine, during COVID, Miranda talked about that. My position was very well timed in that we were able to help people through the COVID emergency. One of the things that Paul Kramer did, signed us up with the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation as a community partner. So we were able to work with the folks in Topeka, make sure that not only our tenants, but our landlords were getting the proper paperwork in to be registered for these programs. I actually talk about it on the next slide. I'll give you a little bit more detail about that. We went in, oh, I'm sorry, go back one, I'm sorry, yeah, messed up.
Okay.
We didn't rehearse.
That's okay.
It's actually 2 slides later.
Okay.
In terms of informing and educating, working through the Leavenworth Times, getting the word out to tenants and landlords alike, working through our social media with our public affairs officer, direct emails to folks who now we know how to contact them because we have that rental registration database and contact information, and also community outreach. A couple weeks ago, I spoke to a PTSD dinner down at the Rock of Ages Church. You know, let these veterans know, many who are kind of in that area between homelessness and having housing, letting them know how to take advantage of some of the programs that we have. I've spoken to, you know, our Lions Club, gone out and spoken with the NAACP, with local churches. In terms of community outreach, when we've had community meals, I've gone out and passed out rack cards, let folks know what programs we have available, and of course supporting some of our other housing programs. They're not directly in my area, but when I'm letting people know about what help they can get as a tenant, I'm also letting folks who own homes know that we have programs that can allow grants to improve their housing. People who are looking to purchase a house, we let them know that the city can provide our low-income residents assistance in doing that. So, it really is a virtuous cycle, helping the folks who live here know what things our community can provide for them. Coordination with other agencies and utilities. One of the neat things that happened this year, we had that horrible freeze last year, frozen pipes, things like that. This year, because they knew this position existed, Kansas Gas would actually contact me right before the freeze came in and let me know when they were getting ready to shut off the gas. So I'm able to identify if it's a rental property. I'm able to call landlords who may not have known that, your tenant moved out, but did you know they're getting ready to turn off the gas and your pipes are at risk of freezing? So this is the kind of relationship we're trying to develop, and we have developed with our property managers, our owners, and our landlords to let them know the city is a partner with them in providing safe, sanitary, quality housing to their tenants. We talked about the guidance center. Fraud prevention, working with the Register of Deeds. We actually had our first case several months ago where somebody on eBay found a rental property in Leavenworth and claimed that they were the landlord. And we're trying to get prospective tenants to Venmo them a security deposit. Fortunately, we had folks, in that case, they called the Register of Deeds, said, is this really the property owner? And I was able to identify, no, that's not the property owner. I was able to call the real property owner, let them know that there was a fraud being attempted against their property. We're also able to connect that property owner and the prospective tenant with the property that they wanted to rent, but making sure that they were actually renting it from the real person, not some fake person. The health department routinely, when they get a call, will refer folks back to me, and I'm able to address the underlying issues which created a health and safety concern. One of the things is a part of the TBRA program that we ran, I'm also now certified as a HUD Housing Quality Inspector. This is just another set of standards that's out there that establishes what safe sanitary housing looks like and what standards have to be met. Next slide, please. So this just goes back, you can see the progression of rental revenue over the past several years, what we brought in each year, the last 3 years that we've had the position in place. This also provides you a comparison with how Leavenworth ranks with other communities that have programs. And you can see, in fact, Leavenworth is a very good deal for landlords and property owners. You can see what these other communities charge, the difference between licensing and more intensive programs versus what we have here in Leavenworth. That just gives you an idea what landlords in other communities are faced with from their local government. Next slide, please. So this is the one where I was going to tell you a little bit about. You go back and look, and I think one of the big achievements, and it was obviously helped by Paul signing us up to be a community partner, under the KIRA program, Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance, which is that COVID relief program for families that suffered a loss of income due to COVID. And that loss of income wasn't necessarily that they had COVID. If you were a worker in a business that had to shut down and you lost income, you qualified for this. But most importantly, so few people recognize or remember that landlord was also suffering. We had landlords who faced the risk of financial insolvency because all of a sudden they weren't getting the revenue in. Now, we had to do a bit of an estimate because the figures are maintained at the county level, but Leavenworth represents about 2/3 of the rentals in Leavenworth County. We estimated we helped over 750 families and brought over $4.8 million to landlords and property owners in the city of Leavenworth to keep them as viable businesses so they could continue to provide housing to the folks who live here. Now, of that 750, fully 1/3 of those were directly assisted by the city. So we're looking at 250 families that may have had a problem. They weren't sure how to process their application. Commissioner Bowder, when she was mayor, recognized our folks down at the Workforce Development Center who provided an invaluable service. Families, especially low-income families who may not have had printers and scanners and computer literacy, were part of those 150 families that we were able to help get this support to keep them in safe housing during the COVID emergency. You can see the number of folks that I've assisted on a yearly basis. Of course, 2021, a large number of those were rental assistance, not specifically property maintenance type cases. Paul had asked when I came on board, said, find a way to measure satisfaction. And right now, we have about a 70%, over 70% resolution rate for folks who come to the city looking to get something taken care of with their landlord. Now, can't keep everybody happy. About 20% of our cases are closed. That may mean folks didn't follow up or they weren't happy with the resolution. And unfortunately, in a landlord-tenant type issue, there's typically going to be somebody who's not fully satisfied. The good news story about that, though, is of these, and I'm at a point now over 950 cases in the last 3 years, only 3 of those cases have had to be taken to municipal court. And in all 3 cases, the city has prevailed. We've been successful. In terms of rental registration, when somebody comes to the city with an issue, over 90% of those properties are registered. So we have somebody we know to reach out to. And we've already talked about some of that coordination and collaboration with city staff. I routinely work with the fire marshal. Any issue on fire safety in a home, the fire department receives a copy of that, so they have that for their records. One of the things we've discovered, we've found safety issues. Folks are supposed to go through the inspections division to get permits when they do certain types of improvements. And we've found cases where permits are not being issued. Some landlords are trying, or property managers are trying to avoid the expense that comes with that. The key is, and the point I like to make is, this is a safety issue. The kind of things I find, a very typical one is a water heater installation where the pipe of the water heater is either a negative slope or it's flat, meaning that carbon monoxide can begin to accumulate in the home because it's not properly venting. And a point I try to make to our landlords is you are exposed to liability in the event somebody is injured from something that you've done without the proper inspection and permit from the city. And I think that word is beginning to get out. Again, working with my colleagues in code enforcement, I'm able to identify the landlord. So when there's a problem, whether it's with a grass or abandoned vehicle, the types of things that code enforcement deals with, we know the person to get a hold of to get these problems resolved. Next slide, please. So this just gives you an idea. I provide Julie Hurley a report on a weekly basis, and it basically says, you see the historic data there. You can see, January, the month that we're in now, how many maintenance cases, evictions, the types of things that we are helping people with. Typically what you see in most municipalities, maintenance, evictions, and infestation and mold tend to be the top 3 issues. And if we didn't have rental assistance, if you aggregated infestation and mold, that's about what we would see here. So we're following online with what other communities across the country are dealing with. Obviously, you see the number of rental assistance cases from last year. That's where we were helping folks with the CURE program. That's dropped off. It was expected to drop off significantly this year now that that program has come to an end. Next slide, please. So the downside to this, and Miranda touched on some of this, here is our city statistics on eviction. You can see our average was about 20 per month back in 2019 prior to COVID. That dropped in 2020. It was low again in 2021. Unfortunately, in 2022, we're now back up to pre-pandemic levels for eviction, and you heard some of the results of that from Miranda's briefing. Just some of the information I'm tracking, you can see what the average rental payment was for a tenant in the city of Leavenworth being evicted. You can see that the rents are starting to go up. You can also see what the average judgment was that a landlord was asking the court. So extrapolating from that, you can see a landlord may go a month or 2 or 3 before they file for eviction to give tenants the opportunity to try to seek out assistance that they may be able to find. June is the highest month for evictions. Next slide, please. So just some updates and information for the commission. The market is starting to shift. We are finding fewer and fewer low-cost rentals available in the city, and I'll provide you some details on that in the next slide. Several of our older and established owners, some have unfortunately passed away. Many chose to liquidate their properties when mortgage rates were low and the price was very high. There was a great demand for housing. So we've seen a lot of the city's rental stock sold, and it's now been purchased. I mean, Leavenworth is kind of a big deal in the rental market. I had one of our property managers tell me that we're referenced in national trade journals talking about rentals. So when you look at the folks that we have who own property in Leavenworth, talked about 45 different states. It also includes corporations out of Atlanta and Dallas and Seattle and New York City. So we're seeing a change in the ownership. Again, Miranda, I think, talked about that. We're seeing fewer options for tenants with, credit issues or problems that they've had in their past. Talked about the inspections that I do. I already covered that we pass that on to Hal up in the inspections division. Talked about the positive feedback that we're getting. Tenants really appreciate having somebody to call. And I got to tell you, I get calls from Baser and Tonganoxie and not Lansing, other cities in the county. I get calls from Topeka and Wichita. A lot of folks who want to get the help that our reputation is established that we can provide, that unfortunately I have to let them know my jurisdiction is limited to our city limits. Next slide, please. So this starts to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in terms of rental rates. This was a slide from the first briefing from our last briefing in our first briefing in 2020, and you can see the average rent at that time was $810, went up to $831. Next slide, please. Where we are right now, the average rent in Leavenworth is about $998 a month. And more importantly, what you want to take from this slide, you see that circle, the donut there, and what that's telling you. So the rentals available in the city at that $500 to $700 range now represents 5% of the available rentals in Leavenworth. When I first briefed the commission, that was 42% of the rents. So you can see the change in the stocks of rentals that we have. That $700 to $1,000 range, that's grown. We're even seeing for the first time now rentals in Leavenworth up over $2,000 a month. Now, obviously, and I'll talk about this in a later slide, some of that depends. Is it a one-bedroom? Is it a two-bedroom? Is it a three-bedroom apartment? The rental increase from the time I first briefed you in 2020, we've had about a 19% increase in rentals. Go to the next slide, please. Now, what this does is gives you an idea where we rank with other communities in our area. So you can see just between March and December in that 9-month period, our average rental went up about $40 a month, 4% increase. Our rentals are a little bit higher than places like Wichita and Kansas City, Kansas, but they're also lower than places like Shawnee, Olathe, Kansas City, Missouri. Lawrence, Kansas, as a representative example, it's not on the chart, but their average monthly rent is about $1,068. So you kind of see where we rank. Next slide, please. Now, this is off a commercially available website. This isn't specific data that the city has collected, but just to give you an idea, the average monthly rental for a one-bedroom apartment going from 2015 to now, you can see that rising trend. You can see that there are spikes and valleys based on seasonal changes and also what we went through with COVID. Next slide, please. Two-bedroom. Next slide, please. Three-bedroom. And that's just something I wanted to provide to the commission, give you an idea where we are in the community. Next slide, please. So just the way ahead in conclusion, We want to continue to provide safe sanitary housing for our tenants. I like to think that over the last 3 years, you know, when I first got here, I actually had one landlord talk to me about a good old-fashioned eviction. He was going to turn the utilities off on a tenant. And I had to explain to him, I said, sir, if you do that, I'm going to have to take you to court. That's an illegal eviction. But that apparently was the way some landlords did things prior to the establishment of this position. If you look at those 3 cases that we've taken to municipal court, one was a case where a disabled veteran had the heat go out in their home. The veteran and the homeowner, who had been friends, had a falling out. Homeowner decided he didn't want the veteran living there anymore. And the judge was very gracious at explaining to the homeowner, there's a legal process for evictions. If you follow that legal process, you'll have no problems. For whatever reason, that homeowner decided they weren't going to follow the legal process and ended up being fined several $1,000s for not providing heat to that disabled veteran. Second case, we had one where a nurse who lost employment, had a pre-existing condition, same kind of situation, was living in the home of a friend. Friends had a falling out, decided they didn't want them to live there anymore, turned off the water. Same thing. When that and they were told, if you want to evict somebody, follow the legal process, go before a judge, present your evidence. Decided they didn't want to do that, they were also fined. So we want to continue to do the kinds of things that we're doing. And I got to say, the landlords that we have great landlords, great property managers. You know, sometimes I'll get somebody will want to pick by name a certain landlord and give them the appellation of being a slumlord. But I got to tell you, those are the ones who've come to me and said, look, I manage, you know, hundreds of properties for dozens of different owners. And when you provide that citation from the city, they now have a reason to go back to the owner and explain why they have to do that. Whereas in many cases before, the property manager does not want to be the bearer of bad news. So we're making a difference in our community from the position that you, the commission, created. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to increase the rental registrations that we have, and we're going to continue with our programs for outreach and education. Next slide, please. That concludes my briefing. What questions do you have?
Great presentation. Only question that I have is if once a tenant has a problem, they reach out to you, they contact you, do they have to come down to the city hall and fill out any paperwork?
We do. So what happened, the state passed a law that says a municipality cannot conduct random inspections, cannot conduct periodic inspections. So it is a requirement that we have an invitation from a lawful occupant. And what we've done is we've created a form, the process we have that, you know, covers the tenant, covers the landlord, covers the city. I have them provide their information, explain in writing what the problem is, and then that gives the city legal authority. I can now go on the property, whereas many of you know, code enforcement does not go on the property. They drive around the city. What they can see from the street, they can cite. My position is different because I'm actually going into the residence. So there's a form that we provide. I also provide them a copy of that tenant's handbook. And after explaining that the city can't provide legal advice or legal assistance, Kansas Legal Services has provided us an application form which the signature on the form basically serves as a release of information. It's that tenant giving me permission to make calls on their behalf. I don't take anonymous complaints, whereas code enforcement who doesn't go on a property can take an anonymous complaint. I can't take an anonymous complaint. Mayor, does that answer the question?
Oh, yes, sir, that's great. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Chip. Mr. LeBlanc.
I just have a comment, yeah. That stairway, I recognized it. I worked
Please
for-
don't name the apartment
No,
complex.
no, but I worked for a home care agency, and there was a woman who actually was handicapped that lived in that apartment upstairs. I don't think she's there anymore, but anyway, I got a call from one of my staff, because I did quality assurance inspections for home care, and about the stairs, going up and down the stairs to get to that apartment for her. And I went over there and I went up the stairs and it scared me.
Oh, yeah.
There was like, that was before you were here. There was
Yeah.
nothing we could really do about it. And my boss was calling the Kansas Department of Health or different agencies and nobody could do anything. So we had to tell a woman we couldn't take care of her because we couldn't put our employees at risk.
All credit to the commission, because you created the position, you gave me the authorities, and that's just, it's my favorite example, but that's just one example. We had another one right before this very bad cold freeze that we had. I've had several properties had no heat, have apparently had no heat for several years. People are using space heaters. So Andy Marshall and I Andy and I work together. Andy's the fire marshal. We make sure that there's a smoke detector in that property. I mean, the last thing any of us wants to see is a fire, death, or injury in our community. Another one of the stories I like to tell, we had a fire in one of our older homes. I mean, had what's called tube and cap wiring. It's just very old wiring. And I literally thank God that the fire happened at 10 o'clock in the morning and not 1 a.m. because there would have been a different outcome. But that's the thing we're able to do. I get into properties. I let Andy Brooks know about, when it lacks fire extinguishers that are supposed to be there, when it lacks smoke detectors or other fire protection equipment that's supposed to be there. So very close relationship working with other folks in the community. But there's just dozens and dozens of stories like that. And again, credit to the commission. You created the position and gave me the authorities I need to do what we all know needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions?
No, thanks for all you do.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for the information.
That concludes our meeting. I'm gonna go around the table.
Nothing.
Yep.
Well, nothing. Have a great rest of the week.
Yeah, about the same. Have a great rest of the week.
Stay warm.
Yeah, stay warm. I don't have anything else.
It's supposed to get cold, yeah.
Yep, God bless, and shout out to Joanna Schultz and the NAACP for putting together a health fair event yesterday in celebration of Martin Luther King Day. And thank you to the commissioners that came out and helped supported the event. And God bless you all. Have a good one. Meeting adjourned.
Okay.
That was a lot of good stuff.